Evil is evil, Stregobor, said the Witcher. Lesser, greater, middling. It's all the same. I can't do the Geralt voice. Proportions are negotiated, boundaries blurred. I'm not a pious hermit. I haven't done only good in my life. But if I'm to choose between one evil and another, then I prefer not to choose at all.
Hello, and welcome to Raise a Glass, the podcast where we talk about the stories and storytellers that shape us. My name is Eric Lintela.
And I am Hunter Danson.
And we know, as do you, dear listeners, that it's been a little bit of time since we last recorded an episode. I think, about 5 months at this point. We took a break because... just like Hunter had a child last year, I did as well. So we both have two very little ones at home. And so we needed some extra dad time. But we're back with an episode that I think you're going to enjoy. And we plan on following it up with a few more in the coming weeks.
Yeah, we are back. And it will remain to be seen whether we're better than ever. But we're back.
We're back, and we are now both over 30, so we are both older than ever.
Yeah.
That's how it goes, right?
Yeah, but not older than Geralt of Rivia. Thankfully.
Yeah, how old is he?
I think he's supposed to be like 60 or 70. Witchers age slowly.
So, Hunter, as is tradition here, it's vital for me to ask what is in your glass.
Okay, so I have something that might look strangely familiar to you and yet not familiar. This is a Lockin's Ruby Grapefruit Kolsch style beer.
I love it.
You have brought to this podcast a few times.
It's true. Oh, man. Oh, that's a great sound.
Oh, good. I'm glad you can hear it. Here we go. It's pretty good. Pretty refreshing. Not a huge fan of the fruity beers, but it's not bad.
Okay, glad to hear it. It and I saw you're using our raise the glass pint glass koozies
That's right. Yes,
that you bought. Yep.
limited
I'd
run
never
of
seen
these.
one of them before you sent that to my house. It's like, there's a pint glass version of a koozie.
Mm-hmm.
But, it protects your glass.
Yeah. What's in your glass, Eric?
Well, Hunter, if we had done this episode a few weeks ago, I had a 0% alcohol or 0 ABV Guinness that I had bought a 4-pack of.
Okay.
But I finished them. Actually, I shared a lot with my son and nephews. Because really, there's no alcohol in it, and it's pretty good. It's a little bit juicier than regular Guinness, but no real complaints. And so instead, scouring my more meager options, I made the ultimate decision of having some cereal milk in my bowl glass.
Okay.
So I have some Aldi brand cinnamon life that I have eaten. So it's Aldi brand cinnamon life milk.
Okay. If you must know, I
not
got
bad,
this.
actually.
I got this Kolsch from Aldi as well.
I expected you to. Still some cereal in it. So, Hunter, following up that fascinating conversation, what are you raising a glass and pouring one out for tonight?
Man, I'm so out of practice. I didn't prepare one, so I have to think for a minute.
I'll finish chewing my milk. Give you some
Okay.
time.
I'm gonna raise and pour to the same creature, and that is to Fiona, our cat. I am raising a glass to the queen of fluff, Fiona. She's a very sweet cat. She's deaf. We love her very dearly. But the other day, I was trying to put Cordelia down for a nap, and I had just put her down when Fiona came, meowed really loudly, and scratched on the door to the bedroom.
Oh,
And Cordelia cried for the next 10 minutes.
no.
So
No.
I am raising a glass to our cat because I love her very much, but I'm pouring it out because she can be very disruptive. She has bad timing sometimes with kids. But that's just how it is. Got to take the good fluff and the bad fluff. So,
There it is.
how about you?
Well, I am pouring one out because I just got a text that one of my volleyball teammates just either broke or dislocated his pinky.
Oh, no.
Which means my very late game of volleyball tonight is probably going to be played with a man down.
Wow.
Which makes things more challenging.
That's a late game of volleyball.
It is at 10:30 p.m. tonight, if it's not running late. But I am raising a glass to an upcoming event that, I don't know about you, Hunter, but I've been looking forward to for 2 or 3 months. In just a couple weeks, Hunter and I are gonna see each other. Is this the first time since we started this podcast?
Yeah. First in person.
Yeah, friends, it has been many a month, over a couple of years since we've seen each other. And 35 episodes or so in. And so we've got a pretty cool plan for some episodes that we're going to be doing, and for a show that we're going to go see, or a concert. And so I'm looking forward to sharing that with all of you. And to hanging out with you, Hunter. I miss it.
Yeah.
Excited to raise a glass together and to not have to wear headphones while
Yeah.
I speak.
That'll be nice.
The small things. So, with that said, it's important to ask the question: why are we going to be talking about The Witcher, and which Witcher are we going to be talking about? There is a lot of different versions of this. This is not anything that's really impacted my life, but I know it has yours a lot. And so, would you care to share that with us because that will help us understand what to summarize for our listeners.
Yeah, we're doing The Witcher, which was originally based on Andrei Sapkowski's book series. There's short stories and another book of short stories, and then there was a full book series that follows Geralt of Rivia, who is the Witcher, and Yennefer of Vengerberg, and Cirilla. And my first contact with The Witcher was the Witcher 3 video game. I walked into a random GameStop in Idaho, pulled it off the shelf, and bought it for $40. And I went home, and I now have over 300 hours of Witcher 3 on my PlayStation uh, for my $40. And it just kind of absorbed me. The whole world. It's a fantastic game. And honestly, in terms of just pure immersion in the storytelling and the world, there is not an RPG that I think is able to surpass it. Even new ones that are coming out, just the quality of the writing is so consistent, even throughout the tiny little quests that don't really mean anything, are still told with such care and so much attention to detail. And I read all the books, and I have seen like the first two seasons, and I'm not too crazy about the TV show, but yeah. So The Witcher, I've spent a lot of time in the Witcher universe, and I think a lot of other people have as well. It did pretty well. It's a best-selling book series. It's kind of like the Lord of the Rings for Poland, is how the book series started out. And now that it's more famous, there's translations, and those are selling as well and being read and enjoyed. So we thought it would be a fun way to get back into it. But I'm curious to know, Eric, what is your experience with The Witcher? What was your first contact?
I think my first contact was going to your house in Idaho, your place in Idaho, and watching you play it for a little bit. It was either Witcher 3. And Witcher 3, from what I've heard, is the best of the video games.
Yeah.
But was it the third one that came out?
Yeah, it was the third.
Okay. It sounds like a stupid question, but the way numbering things works, it's just...
Oh, yeah, it's very confusing nowadays.
It's the 360th Xbox. No, it's the first. It's just the Xbox. It's like the Fast and Furious movies broke numbering systems.
Kingdom Hearts 2.5 remix. Sorry.
King Killer Chronicles 2.5.
Yeah.
And so I saw that, and then I have seen all 3 seasons of the show very discordantly or disjunctly. I don't. Maybe I watched one. Maybe I think I might have watched the second one right when it came out. It was on Netflix, and so Netflix trapped me into its algorithms or whatever it was. But mostly, I've watched them while doing other things like vacuuming or washing dishes. And so I watched a recap of the first and second season before this episode. at least of the show. And
Mm-hmm.
oh my goodness, that helped me so much to understand what in the world I was watching. Wish I'd done that before I watched the show, because I got super confused because of the way the storytelling is done, and because I was never really paying enough attention, and there are so many characters.
Mm-hmm.
And the first season starts at the end, kind of, but also the middle, but not at the beginning.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah.
so that's me. That's my interaction with The Witcher. I kind of see it as another fantasy video game that became a TV show. I'm encouraged to hear that it was a good book series, but I feel like my approach to it has been, it's a video game that became a movie, a TV
Oh,
show with Henry Cavill.
yeah. Well, the thing is, the video game is more well known than the books. The video game has sold more copies. I mean, at least in America. In
Yes.
Poland, I'm pretty sure everyone is aware that it was a book series by Sapkowski. Um, but I'm curious, where do you want to go with this? I have a couple things that I'd like to show you, which I think will help you sort of.
Yeah. So Hunter, as based off our conversations around this, the version of this story that has impacted you the most and really actually, shaped you is the video game. And so I thought we would spend most of our time talking about that. You sent me quite a few screenshots. And so I
Mm,
don't know if you wanted to talk about gameplay. I know that one thing that you're really passionate about is the way that video games tell stories
mm-hmm.
and the importance of an open world to discover. And there are things that get you frustrated that um, that it seems like The Witcher does not do. Even though I'm also sure there are some things that it does do that might frustrate you as well.
Yeah. So I have a couple things I'd like to do before we jump in there. Um, First one, I'd like to share a quote. Um, I reread The Last Wish, which is the first in the book series. It's like a collection of short stories that introduce Geralt and Yennefer, um, and not exactly Ciri, but Ciri's origin. Um, and this is a quote. Geralt is having a conversation with Stregobor, who's a wizard, about evil. Evil is evil, Stregobor, said the Witcher. Lesser, greater, middling. It's all the same. I can't do the Geralt voice. Proportions are negotiated, boundaries blurred. I'm not a pious hermit. I haven't done only good in my life. But if I'm to choose between one evil and another, then I prefer not to choose at all. So now we're gonna do this. This is a trailer for The Witcher 3. 10 years ago, this came out. This is the Killing Monsters trailer. If you'd like to look it up at home, it is worth watching.
Wow.
So that was the Killing Monsters trailer of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, in which they used the quote that I just quoted.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think? Would you pre-order that video game?
I understand why others would. It's a little bit violent for me, but it was very impressive. And are you able to do some of those types of moves in the video
Uh,
game? Like, how skilled do you need to be in order to do that?
I mean, it's a video game, so they make it fairly accessible. Um, it's not exactly like that. It's not as close in as that is. I was actually really, I was kind of happy to see that they sort of like echoed that trailer in the first episode of season 3 of The Witcher. Like the way that they did the camera
Mm.
zooms and the slow mo with that little fight scene in the beginning. I was like, oh, that's the Killing Monsters trailer, um, and
Huh.
which I thought was super cool. And I also spotted the Ard, Geralt throwing out an Ard in the fight scene in Dol Blithana, I think it was, with all the elves. Um, so that was pretty cool to see. But you know, there's pretty crazy things that you can do in the combat system. There's a guy on YouTube named Raxabit, and he like, as far as I can tell, he's like the best Witcher 3 player because he just does like really cinematic boss fights. And he does things with the combat system that like you don't most people don't realize that you can do, um like throwing bombs in a certain boss fight to bring down Detlef, and all this crazy stuff, that makes it actually look like that trailer and like actual Witcher gameplay. So you can do it. You do have to practice a lot to make it look that cool, but they give you
Yep.
all the systems and the tools to do it.
Fascinating. And how does that stack up to other video games? So I my newest system is a Switch, and before that it was a PS2. But I spend most of my time playing Nintendo
Yeah.
based games, which is a little bit different than playing, uh, some other more advanced games.
Yeah.
We'll say.
Yeah, so I played Witcher on PS4, and I was probably like my first real like quote unquote next gen game, even though the PS4 is the old gen now. At the time, my previous system was an Xbox 360, and so the PS4 is really much more powerful than the 360. But I guess people think that Witcher feels clunky because there are games like Bloodborne or God of War, or Dark Souls 3, that you can compare it to, and the combat in those games is really, I, if people are big Souls fans, they might come after me a little bit, but with that said, um, the Souls games feel very tight. Like the animations in that game are so meticulous that you always pretty much know what killed you, and so even though
Mm.
it's hard and it's like fast, Bloodborne is pretty fast. Dark Souls 3, the later in the series they go, the faster they get, but and it can be frustrating. You sort of like know what you did wrong. You know that you rolled into that hit that killed you. You should have parried sooner or whatever. In Witcher 3, the animations aren't as meticulous. You're zoomed out more, so you're like higher up
Mm.
over the fighting, and some of the animations from the monsters can feel a little bit cheap. But I think when you practice it a lot and you get used to it, I would argue it like if you're a Souls person and you're kind of skeptical, like just go watch a Raxabit video and what the way that he does the combat system and uses it, and just really showcases like that. Like, yeah, it is a pretty solid combat system, and honestly, I think that maybe on the surface it's not as impressive or responsive as something like God of War or a Dark Souls born game, but I think it really delivers a cool experience and has a lot of deep. You can go pretty deep in it.
Okay. Yeah. So for those of you listeners who that meant something for, I hope you follow Hunter's advice. For those of you who might have less video game experience like me, I hope you were able to follow some of that and get excited maybe about this whole world of video games that you've heard about but never fully experienced.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
Well, I'm looking currently at the screenshots you sent me,
oh
and
yeah.
I am just blown away by the settings.
Yeah.
I'm seeing that like all different times of day, um, some places in the forest, in hills, in water and lakes, in
Mhm.
houses, valleys, orchards, like on top of mountains, rainbows. And this looks. I mean, many of these look like one step away from being real. I
Yeah.
interacted with a professor once whose son worked for Assassin's Creed,
Oh, okay.
and went and shot videos, like did live videos shooting of like the Bahamas and the Caribbean in
Mhm.
um, to help the gamers design the Assassin's Creed. I don't know, Dead Man's Chest. I don't know,
Yeah.
Pirates one. Um,
Yeah.
and that was the first time I ever heard or even thought about gaming systems and games using real life settings
Mhm.
to almost like overlay over those the universe.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what keeps me coming back to The Witcher is the atmosphere.
Mm.
Um, because I mean the settings are gorgeous and like the lighting with the sunsets, um, and like it doesn't take long for you to like find something that you want to screenshot. Like you could boot it up and then like 5 minutes later you're just going through this valley and it's like the music is going, you can hear the wind. Geralt will be like, "Winds howling." It's a very famous line. Um, and like, even though Velen, which is one of the first places that you start out in, is like a swamp, and it's really kind of an awful place. It's like war torn. There's monsters, drowners, and um, necrophages everywhere eating bodies because there's a war. Uh, but it's just so gorgeous, and the music is it's aside from Outer Wilds, it's probably my favorite video game soundtrack. Um,
Okay.
just because of the atmosphere. Like for a long time, I would just find like a Witcher 3 relaxing music compilation, and that would be like my writing music or studying music or whatever, um, background music, and and just playing the game is just like probably more you know, more than 100 of those hours that I have in the game are just like trotting along on Roach, just going through the
That's the horse.
world. Yes, Roach is the horse, and also um, the name of my phone. Do you know how you can name your phone uh, on the Bluetooth settings?
Mm-hmm.
My phone's name is Roach, uh, and
Hmm.
I've had multiple Roaches, just like Geralt. He always names his horse Roach. Um, but more than 100 of those hours is just soaking in the world and the atmosphere. Um, I have a couple of these screenshots are kind of meaningful. I don't know. I think what I
Yeah.
might do is I'll when I post the episode thing on Mastodon and Twitter, I will put up some screenshots too, so that people can look at them.
Okay.
But if they want. Uh, so the first one I'd like to highlight um, is
Great.
This is a picture of Geralt lounging like a swimsuit model uh, in the Viper gear, the Viper School armor, which is probably my favorite armor. Um, and he's posing for a picture here. And this is um, this is in the Blood and Wine DLC. And something that's really great about The Witcher is that after you finish the main game, it just gets better. Like the DLCs just get better and better. Hearts of Stone is great, and Blood and Wine is just fantastic. And one of the things that they do in Blood and Wine, which is amazing, is they give you an estate. They give Geralt an estate. He like inherits it as like payment, sort of. I can't remember exactly, but you get to fix up this estate. You get to have a wine named after you. Uh, you got a guy that you can just go play Gwent with all the time, and I have to talk about Gwent too. But this picture, you get this picture painted, and then you can hang it on the wall in your estate, I think. And of course, the guy paints it, and it's like Geralt is like half nude, and like with the toga. But for a long time, this screenshot was actually the background on my PS4. Was just like Geralt lounging like this. And that's kind of like the fun of The Witcher 3 is you kind of get to have your own version of Geralt. And I think that's why I actually, it's really strange for me to say this because I'm a person who loves books, loves reading, and that's, my favorite medium. But when it comes to The Witcher, my favorite way to experience The Witcher is through The Witcher 3, because I have built up this relationship with Geralt, my Geralt that I have played, that I have suffered with, and that I have like finally. And after all of that suffering and playtime, you get to have this estate and get all these rewards as the player, and see Geralt really get something back for everything that he's gone through. And this picture is kind of, to me, it's kind of like the representation of all of that. Geralt getting to enjoy himself finally. Except I'm sure it probably doesn't last long for Geralt.
Yeah, no, it doesn't seem to be able to really lean into long,
Yeah.
joyful moments.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, part of the experience of a Witcher. Right? Witchers were, in many ways, created to fight monsters. And if he's not fighting monsters, is he living out his purpose?
Yeah. He has to be on the path, as the Witchers call it. So yeah, I did send another pose too, but I think the lounging one is the one for me. In Beauclair, these are like there's you get to go into a fairy tale land in Blood and Wine. This whole enchanted place, and you fight the big bad wolf as he's a werewolf, and there's like a tiny village, and unicorn. There's a bunch of stuff, and actually, this is one of the things about The Witcher is that it is based on fairy tales, like dark interpretations of fairy tales. So, in The Last Wish, which is the first book series or first book, there's a story about Nevelyn, and it's Beauty and the Beast, right? There's this, and they did it in the TV show too.
That's where Siri comes from.
Not exactly. Well,
no, that was a different beast.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You're talking season 2. They did it, right?
Yeah, they did it in season 2.
Okay.
And in the book, Geralt is alone. In the show, I think they have Ciri with him, but he goes to this old rundown house that's enchanted, and there's this big beast guy. Turns out he was cursed, and he's living with a Bruxa, which is a vampire, female vampire, sort of intelligent, but I don't know, not fully intelligent. Witchers, and especially Geralt, does not kill intelligent monsters, like Dopplers or even succubuses, or in The Last Wish. And also in the TV show, there's a Sylvan, which is like the goat thingy, that's like stealing grain for the elves. Uh, and Geralt doesn't kill them, but he kills Bruxas, so I don't know. But it's sort of like the story with Nivellen is a dark take on the Beauty and the Beast, where there will be these merchants. I'm not sure how much they got into this in the show, how much he explained, but in the book, Nivellen talks about how they bring merchants will bring their daughters to him, and they'll leave their daughters there for like a year, and Nivellen kind of treats them as companions, and like some of them sort of fall in love with him too. But at the end of it, the daughters get to leave, and Nivellen gives them a huge sack of gold. And so it's sort of like, and then he falls in with the Bruxa, and the Bruxa sort of turns him, and they end up killing the Bruxa, and the curse is lifted because he actually did love the Bruxa, because only true love can lift it. So, and then there's also the way that he meets Yennefer is with a genie, and so it's these, a djinn, which is basically a genie.
Yep.
Yeah,
But
3 wishes.
Genie with consequences.
Sure. Yeah, the Jid's the technical name. Geralt did get 3 wishes though, so, which I think is cool. You know, I think that's what really, it doesn't just kind of retell the fairy tales. It uses them in a really interesting way. And I think the thing that struck me reading the short stories is just how real the world feels right off the bat. You know, because Sapkowski doesn't really, he doesn't take any time explaining things really. He just kind of tells the story and what happens to Geralt. And sometimes I think that's a bit of a deficiency, especially with the later novels and the way that he tells them out of order and things. I think maybe could have benefited from a little more clarity. But
so the way the first season of the TV show is told is out of order, and does that relate to the way the books are told?
Yeah.
Okay. Does the video game also do that?
Not really. The video game is more linear.
Okay.
But it has flashbacks. Because I mean, one of the things about a video game is that I think it might be harder in a video game to do it out of order and have it make sense, just because, especially since it's an open world RPG, because you want the character to have the player to have a sense of progression through the story and also as they level up and things. But
okay. And are you able to get your Geralt to level up pretty impressively throughout the game?
Yes.
Okay.
So you start out, honestly, the hardest part of The Witcher is the beginning, because you don't have any real gear, and you don't have all the ingredients that you need to make potions and blade oils and things. You have to make the right type of blade oil for the right type of monster. So they give you a bestiary in the game that will tell you which blade oil and which potions are effective, which signs work better on which monsters and things. So, but the game gets easier as you learn more about the monsters, as you level up and you get more skills with Geralt. You spend skill points on certain skills and you get stronger. And it definitely gets easier as you progress and become more experienced. But
Hunter, I have to say, this is fascinating to me. I'm learning a lot. I was looking up just a little bit as you were talking, a little bit more about the TV show, just because that's the way I've most interacted with it. And I was just coming across the article that Henry Cavill, I always say his name wrong, I don't know, is being replaced by Liam Hemsworth in the fourth season of the show. Did you know that?
I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it seems like, and it's not fully clear why, but throughout the first three seasons of the TV show, Henry Cavill said multiple times he's had a strong desire to follow the source material of the books, and that
Mm-hmm.
isn't the story that is being told.
Mm,
And now it's unclear whether that's the reason why he left. But it seems
yeah.
like that's somewhat accurate, and it actually, based off other things I've learned about Henry Cavill, is he loves Warhammer and is really really into. I think he's like a big nerd, um,
Yeah.
and
Uh,
I could definitely see how somebody who loves the source material of something so deeply could be offended to the point of leaving, um,
mm-hmm.
by a story being told that's alternative to
Yeah.
a true representation of the story.
Yeah. That's yeah. I mean, honestly, I really liked the casting of the TV show, but that's about as far. And I liked some of the scenes and things, but it's really not. I didn't enjoy it that much, and I don't have a strong urge to finish season three,
Yeah.
especially since Netflix has cracked down on us moochers. But uh, um, I don't want to just get lost in offering opinions about The Witcher and stuff. I'd like to get into more how it's shaped me mostly. But uh, the one way that I can segue off of this is um, interpretations of the source material, because the interesting thing is that when they made the first Witcher game, Sapkowski signed a license for them to tell a completely different story with his characters. I think they paid him like $10,000 or $20,000, or that's it. It's like just a one time thing, and they made the game, and it did decently, and then they made a second one, and the third one, and the third one blew up. But I I have a strange relationship with the books where I really like the original uh, short stories like Last Wish and Sword of Destiny, but I'm really not crazy about the direction that Sapkowski took the main story in, um,
Mm.
and the way that he develops Geralt, which is he doesn't really develop Geralt at all. um, Geralt starts out pretty sour. Even though he wants to do good, and he has a sort of optimism buried under all of his cynicism. Um, but that doesn't really change. The only thing that he falls in love with Yennefer and sort of becomes a father to Ciri. Um, but he himself doesn't really change that much, and he doesn't. He's really quite bitter throughout the books,
Mm.
and I don't know. It drives me a little nuts sometimes, and then there's this whole section with this like bounty hunter character who's supposed to be such a good fighter that he's able to kill witchers, and I'm just like totally not buying that. And he's just a really annoying. Maybe because the audiobook version I listened to, the voice that the guy did for him was awful. Um, so maybe that's why I didn't like it. Um, but there's really no closure. Like Geralt and Yennefer are supposed to be on some like island, Avalon, but no one really knows where they are. And Ciri is like hanging out with Galahad, Sir Galahad, and there's not really any I guess she saved the world, but there's no closure. Um, so it's interesting because the Witcher games are basically fan fiction, uh, and so is the TV show.
Fun idea.
Um,
Yeah.
and it seems like the TV show, to me, it just seemed like they tried to condense everything. Like they they put Cirilla into all of the short stories and just kind of condense everything. I don't really remember season 2 that much because I watched almost all of it in one night. But I don't know. I really like my Geralt from Witcher 3 because I choose to be kind of a more honorable Geralt. Like you can be a total jerk in The Witcher 3. They totally allow you to do that. And you can go around wearing the rabbit ears and the weird, like, professor glasses with Geralt and just be a jerk to everybody. Um, and you can choose who to romance. I mean, one of the things that I pour out for the Witcher series is just the male gaze. It's in all the books. Geralt sleeps with, pretty much every single attractive woman that shows up in the books. Um, and you can do the same thing in the game. All the 3D models that they use for the women are like, perfect, kind of impossible body models. And um, it's not that the female characters don't have depth, but they're really not that great. I mean, I like Yennefer, but they're not as dimensional as the male characters. They don't have as many dimensions. That's how it comes across to me, and it shouldn't really be a surprise. It's written by a man, but
Can you play as any other character in the game, or are you always Geralt?
you're always Geralt, except for flashback sequences where you play as Ciri.
Okay. If there was a fourth Witcher game that came out, would you buy it and play it?
Probably, eventually. I might watch a couple reviews first,
Yeah.
because no studio is perfect, and the way that big games are handled nowadays makes me quite skeptical about new games. But I'd see some reviews and see how it was, and probably play it. I've spent so much time. They're actually doing a remake of the first Witcher, which will be interesting because I tried to play the first one. I put like maybe 6 or 7 hours in it, but it's really really clunky. It shows its age.
Yeah.
Not just the graphics. The graphics are fine to me. I don't really mind that much about graphics, but the gameplay is really kind of frustrating. um, I played the second one too, and the second one feels a little more modern, but it's not quite as I don't know. The combat is not as smooth as The Witcher 3, and one of my big gripes with the games actually is that I feel like CD Projekt has a thing for Triss. Because like one of the big decisions that everyone debates in The Witcher 3 is, do you romance Triss or do you romance Yennefer? And if you read the books and you know anything about Geralt and Yennefer, the answer is Yennefer. Like that's just the right answer. But in the first two games, Yennefer isn't even an option. Like it's Triss or like some other random person. And the first one I think is just everyone, but it's really not great.
So Hunter, as you just so kindly reminded me, Gwent is not the name of a dwarf or a character in the show, but of a game that is played within the show. And I know a little bit about that concept just from being a big fan of a lot of fantasy book series. And it seems like in many fantasy series, there's some version of the game chess or stones that is part of the intellectual growth and competition of various characters and of the culture. And I'm wondering if Gwent is that same thing. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so Gwent is a card game, collectible card game that you can play in The Witcher 3. And it's kind of like another take on Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone. You collect character cards, like soldier cards that you use in battle. Gwent, I think, I don't want to say that it's exactly simplified. It's just that there's a lot less mechanics going on. The really only thing that really matters in Gwent is the power of your cards. So each card has a power. Like let's say I put down we only each have one card in Gwent. I put down a card that has a 10 on it, a strength of 10. You put down a card that has a strength of 11, and we end the round. You win the round. The only thing that matters is whether or not your strength, your total strength of all your cards is higher. And there's 3 rounds, and you have a limited number of cards. So one of the things that you have to learn in Gwent is how to use your cards. Is you're like, do you want to spend the ball in the first round trying to win, or do you want to spend them and try to get your opponent to spend their cards in order to win, so that you have more cards at the end, so that you can use and win the whole thing. And it's sort of set up as like a battlefield. There's like a front row and then a ranged row and then a like a catapult row. And you collect cards throughout the game. You buy them from innkeeps and other merchants, and you also you get them from winning Gwent games. And usually you can play with innkeeps and merchants and other people. And then there's a few special, like there's like a tournament that you can enter. And I think for a lot of people, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt just becomes The Witcher 3 Gwent. Because it really is such a fun. It is so much fun. It is so much fun that my wife and I figured out a way to play Gwent with a normal deck of cards, and we called it Poor Man's Gwent. And I'll have to look up the rules because it was actually pretty fun. Like Gwent is so much fun because it's like very simple. You each just take turns putting down a card, but there's a lot of strategy to like. You have to decide which ones to put down and in what order, and how to save them for each round and try to guess what your opponent has. And the great thing about The Witcher 3 is Gwent is that it's not multiplayer. So the game lets you collect all of the cards and build the best decks, and you don't have to worry about researching a meta or like that's always changing. And I played the Gwent because they made it into a standalone multiplayer game like Hearthstone, like a digital one, and they changed a bunch of stuff, and it's pretty fun, but it gets really convoluted and complicated, and you definitely could not play it as an actual card game. But but the meta is always changing, and you have to have all the best cards and like build your decks in order to compete, and it's just kind of exhausting, for me at least. I know a lot of people really enjoy it, but if I had the time, I might enjoy it more. But so yeah, Gwen, I sent you a couple screenshots of what I think. This one where I had a power of 159, which I thought was pretty high, so I screenshotted it. But you can also get character cards, so you can get Yennefer, you can get Geralt, you can get Cirilla, Dijkstra. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'll have to boot up a round of Gwent for you sometime if we are able to get together.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I would just boot up The Witcher 3 in order to play Gwent. I would go to the nearest merchant or somebody and just be like, "Hey, can we play Gwent?" And one of the really funny things is like, um, sometimes you'll be on like a really urgent quest or something, and then you go to like an innkeeper or something, and you need to ask them a question about a monster or something, and then you see the little option is like, "Care to play Gwent?" And you just go down. And Geralt's like, "Yeah, I got this monster to take care of, but he has the innkeep. Care for a round of Gwent?" And then they both nod at each other. And then you play a round of Gwent.
That's great.
um, that's Gwent.
Well, I'm glad I led us into this part of it with such an ultimately it turned out to be something from left field. I tried.
Mm.
But Hunter, ultimately, I've been hearing a lot about the way that this game and the game within the game and the game that you created based off the game within the game and the game that you played that you stopped playing based off the game within the game. I think I got it. I'm hearing about how those are things that you've spent a lot of time doing and a lot of time enjoying, and at this point, multiple years of your life working through, and it's been something that your wife has been involved in.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other ways that this video game and the other aspects of it have shaped you?
I think there'll always be a space in my head for The Witcher. um, I wanted to share this moment in The Witcher 3 with you to hopefully kind of sum up like the feeling of The Witcher 3 for me. And this is a moment for those of you who have played the game. It's I think it's when you first get to Novigrad and you walk into a tavern and you sit down and a bard tunes up a lute, and starts playing a song that engrosses and captures everybody in the room. And it turns out the song is about you, Geralt of Rivia, the Butcher of Blaviken. So here we go. That was the Wolven Storm. Highly recommend looking it up. It's just a good song, even on its own. Um, but to me, it represents that moment in the game is something that I never experienced in a video game before. That attention to detail when you walk in, and the way that they pan around the room and show everyone's reactions to the song. How this sort of, because a video game has a little you have a little extra incentive to be connected to it versus like a TV show because you're playing it, you have to control it. So
Hmm.
you sort of, you walk in and you're immersed in this tavern and you can just kind of soak in the atmosphere and soak in this song in a way that I don't think you don't really experience it the same way as you would if you were just watching it. And I think as far as themes go, I think the real fantasy that The Witcher 3 represented to me was having a very like direct and satisfying way to correct injustice in a broken world. Because that's what I think about when I think about The Witcher. Is that killing monsters trailer was Geralt saving a woman um, who was you assume being unjustly hanged, and in the last wish he talks about how the first monster that he killed was bald and had rotting teeth, and was telling like a 13-year-old girl that he was time for her to meet a real man, and that was the first monster that Geralt killed. He says, you know, people like to say that one sword is for monsters and one sword is for humans, but really both swords are for monsters. Um,
Is
and
that why
just
he has
that's
two swords? Sorry.
yes, yeah.
Huh.
So monsters are
Fascinating.
vulnerable to silver. So you have a silver sword and you have a steel sword. Um,
Hmm. Sorry for
yeah,
interrupting. I didn't
yeah,
know that.
no. um, so I think that's kind of the place where I was when I encountered The Witcher. It was I think it was around 2016. Um, and we had a very tumultuous election, and even when you don't have an election, when you watch the news, and it doesn't take much to really feel and perceive the brokenness of the world. And
Mm.
um, The Witcher presents a very, very broken world. People are just dirty and they swear all the time, and um, not everyone is dirty, but like um, it's very broken in a very like visceral way. Um, and The Witcher, you as the Witcher, have the power to do something about it most of the time. Because, you have to make a lot of hard choices, and sometimes you can't really fix it. But you can certainly do. It feels like you're doing a lot more than you are. Uh, you know, casting your vote or advocating for something or having a uncomfortable argument or conversation or whatever, um, or just giving money. um, but I don't know. I think as I get older, I think I'm able to recognize that it's a fantasy and that
Mm.
like ultimately gentleness does a lot more for the world than violence does. Um, I think I'll still always enjoy The Witcher. I mean, it's just a fantastic game anyway, but I think I kind of disagree with it a little bit.
It's amazing how something can shape us in many good ways and still have some key differences from what we're about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't think I'll ever forget the Witcher bestiary. And like, I know all of the blade oils you need to use. I know the categories of monsters in The Witcher 3 and everything. It's just information that will always be on tap, just in case, you never know
Yes.
when you're going to run into a wyvern.
And yeah, you gotta find that silver.
Hmm. You need your draconid oil and you got to get out the sign of Ard so you can knock it out of the sky, or use a crossbow or a bomb, but it needs to be like a grape shot or something.
Okay. My brain just went right to the video game Worms. A bunch of worms trying to blow each other up. One of the bombs is like a bomb, and there's cluster bombs. Spent a lot of time playing that. It's a ridiculous game. Nothing at all like The Witcher. But I think this one of the things I'm excited about in this podcast episode that I hope you caught, listeners, or maybe on a re-listen will, is the different storytelling methods and mechanisms that can shape us. We haven't talked about a video game yet on this podcast, at least for a full episode. And yet for both of us, and for, dare I say, most of the American population under the age of 60, video games in many different forms have shaped us. And so I'm actually excited. I'm hoping in one of our future episodes to have us talk about a few games while playing them. I'm not exactly sure what the experience is going to be like from a podcast side of things, but from the podcaster side of it, very, very excited. And so, Hunter, thank you for kind of opening up this entire new genre of storytelling to us. I'm excited to delve into it deeper, and I think The Witcher is a great choice because it clearly has shaped you in many ways, and it's something that even if our listeners haven't, even if you don't know what it is, who haven't played it or seen it or read it, you've probably heard of it. It's having kind of a cultural moment right now, and it'll keep being around, and for the goods and the bads.
I think it's also shaped other video games. Like if you got an open world or even semi-open world RPG, you're going to have stuff that's inspired by The Witcher. And, there's a lot of things that The Witcher is inspired by. But I think it really brings it together, and especially the storytelling. Like, a lot of times you'll play an open world RPG, and there'll be what's called a fetch quest, where you'll talk to somebody, and they'll be like, hey, I need this very specific, very random fish. Can you go get me this fish? You have to go to this pond and you have to use this bait. And and it's kind of like a chore, But in The Witcher 3, there aren't really fetch quests. Like they're all told naturally as stories in the world. And it's really, and you don't have to do all the side content, but if you don't, some of that side content ties back into the main story and will affect what happens in the story. So it's just really, honestly, as far as storytelling goes, I haven't seen or played anything that has been able to touch it.
Have you gone back and replayed it, or have you just kept your?
Oh yeah, I played it last night.
Do you start from the beginning, or do you?
I've done all of it twice.
Okay.
I did a first playthrough. And then I did the DLCs, and then I started a new game plus where you get to keep all of the gear and levels and things, and start a new game and progress through the story again. And I did all of that again, and I did it on Death March, which is the hardest difficulty, because I wanted to get all the achievements, which I did. I got the platinum, so that's a meaningless trophy.
Well, Hunter, can you make sure to put a link to maybe a favorite video of yours for the watch through for this gamer you're talking about? Just so if people want to get like a taste of it, they can see something that's actually worthwhile instead of just going on YouTube and typing in Witcher 3 and clicking whatever shows up.
Yeah, I can send something in there. Um, that really showcases it.
Great. Hunter, is there anything you want to say to close out our show on The Witcher?
I would like to say that if you do decide to play The Witcher 3 and you fall head and over heels into it, don't be like me. Play responsibly. Get some sleep. It is on the Switch, and I cannot imagine what having The Witcher 3 on a handheld device would do to my life. So look, set limits. I know for me, I approach video games now. I approach them as I approach alcohol, like in moderation. Like for me, video games are like that powerful. So even though I unequivocally love The Witcher 3, I mean I have a little some quibbles with it, but I really love it and recommend it. Play responsibly.